right now, your brain is actively working against you, like right this very second.
Oh, absolutely. It's basically running a sabotage program in the background.
Yeah, because neuroscience actually tells us that your brain dedicates this vastly disproportionate amount of processing power to a single negative comment compared to, a literal mountain of praise.
It's so true. I mean, you could have a completely flawless day, right?
Right.
You hit every single one of your targets, you get genuine compliments from your peers, and yet,
And yet at 2 in the morning, you find yourself just staring at the ceiling,
uh,
right? Completely agonizing over this mildly awkward elevator interaction you had like 5 years ago.
oh, I've been there. We all have.
It's the worst. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to figure out exactly why our biology is fiercely wired to sabotage us with negativity.
Yeah. And more importantly, we're going to look at how cutting-edge science says we can actually override that ancient programming, like literally rewrite our own memories.
Exactly. And we have an incredible stack of sources for you today. First, we're looking at this really fascinating article by Lucy Gower from a publication called Lucidity.
Which is great because it really dives into the everyday reality of this negativity bias.
Yeah, and we are pairing that with a truly groundbreaking study out of Columbia University that was recently published in Nature Communications. So, okay, let's unpack this because the way Lucy Gower starts her article is just, it's painfully relatable.
It really is. She sets the stage by describing this professional presentation she gave about 10 years ago,
10 years.
right, a whole decade ago. And it was in this large room packed with people. And she describes that rare feeling where a session just entirely clicks, you
Oh, I
know?
love that feeling, like you're totally in the zone.
Exactly. You're in the zone, the audience is super engaged, and the feedback she received afterward was overwhelmingly positive.
But, and there's always a but, right?
Always.
Yeah.
There was one person in that crowd who left a very specific comment.
Just one person.
Yeah. They wrote, don't wear your sunglasses on your head. It makes you look unprofessional.
Which is just wow. And a full decade later, she admits she cannot remember a single word of the positive feedback, not one word.
Just the sunglasses comment.
All she remembers is the sunglasses comment, which, by the way, I love this. She notes that she still wears her sunglasses on her head to this day.
Good for her.
Right. And now she's boldly added reading glasses to the mix as well, which is just a fantastic detail.
I love the defiance there. But, the core of this anecdote is really striking because she explicitly asked for feedback.
Yeah, she genuinely wanted to improve.
Right. But that one trivial comment still stung, and it stuck like glue for 10 entire years.
It really did. And there was this comment on our article by a reader named Sally Brighton that provided an incredibly vivid analogy for this.
Oh, the broken bulb analogy.
Yes, she said it's like looking at this massive, beautiful neon light display. Imagine 99% of the bulbs are glowing perfectly, right? Creating this gorgeous, intricate image.
But your eyes are just hopelessly glued to the one broken bulb.
Exactly. You physically cannot look away from the single flaw.
And, when you experience that hyperfixation on the broken bulb, it's incredibly easy to assume you're just being overly sensitive.
Oh, totally. You think, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this?
Right. Or that you suffer from this unique lack of confidence. But if we look at this from a neurological and evolutionary standpoint, you are not overreacting at all.
You're really not.
No, your brain is executing the exact protocol it was designed to run. I mean, we often hear that basic evolutionary psychology trope, right? That hundreds of thousands of years ago, if our ancestors ignored a beautiful sunset, they were totally fine.
Right? Who cares about a sunset?
But if they ignored the rustle of a predator in the bushes, they died.
But the thing is, we don't have to rely on those abstract caveman theories anymore. We can actually map this biological imperative in real time now.
What's fascinating here is that we can literally see it happening in the brain.
Right. Let's skip the savannah and get into the hard science. Because the article points to this really pivotal neuroscience study conducted by psychologist John Cacioppo.
And Cacioppo didn't just, hand out questionnaires asking people how they felt.
No, he went way deeper than that.
He fundamentally wanted to measure the actual electrical currency of the brain's reaction to stimuli.
Which is wild.
It is. He hooked participants up to these monitors to track event-related brain potentials. So essentially, he was measuring the millisecond by millisecond electrical activity in their cerebral cortex.
While showing them different types of images.
Right, exactly. They viewed positive images like a sports car or a slice of pizza, then negative images like a mutilated face or a dead cat.
Right.
Yeah, pretty extreme. And then completely neutral pictures, like a plate or a hairdryer.
And the data he pulled from that cerebral cortex activity is just wild. The negative images produced a significantly stronger neurological response than the positive or neutral
It
ones.
wasn't even close.
Right. It isn't just a slight preference. The processing power dedicated to the negative is vastly disproportionate.
Yeah, the neurological data basically shows us that the brain's alarm system is naturally cranked up to a 10 for bad news.
But it barely registers a 2 for good news?
Exactly. Katiapo demonstrated that the brain actually categorizes negative information faster and way more thoroughly than positive information.
Because the negative stimuli cause this massive surge in electrical activity, right?
Right, right, in the critical information processing areas of the cerebral cortex. So our subsequent attitudes and behaviors end up being shaped far more powerfully by bad experiences.
Which brings us to an immediate modern crisis, because that broken bulb instinct might be great for dodging physical threats like a tiger. But when we transition into modern life,
Where threats are rarely lethal.
exactly, where threats are rarely lethal, that same biology starts actively sabotaging our decision-making.
It becomes a massive liability. And Nobel Prize-winning researchers Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky actually proved this through what they called prospect theory.
Okay, yes. Prospect theory.
Yeah, they looked deeply into how humans weigh risk and reward, and they uncovered this severe asymmetry in our psychology. We consistently place far greater weight on the negative aspects of a potential event than the positive ones.
This is the famous $20 experiment, correct?
Yeah, that is the absolute classic distillation of their findings. They discovered that the psychological pain and even the physiological stress a person feels from losing $20
Is significantly stronger.
way stronger.
Hmm.
And it lasts much longer than the fleeting joy or like positive feelings they experience from unexpectedly finding $20.
The risk of loss just simply looms larger in our neural pathways.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
fear the consequences of a negative outcome far more than we desire an equivalent positive gain.
Okay, I have to push back here, or at least, play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Losing $20 is annoying. I get the micro level frustration there. But how does this $20 bias actually scale up? Like, does an individual's minor risk aversion really impact society or business on a macro level?
Oh, it scales up exponentially,
Yeah.
especially when you put groups of loss-averse brains into a boardroom together.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, the macro consequence of this biology is extreme institutional risk aversion, which ultimately just stifles progress. I mean, the most tragic corporate example of this phenomenon is Kodak.
Right. Kodak was the undisputed global king of film photography. I mean, they owned the market.
They absolutely did. And many people don't realize that Kodak actually invented and patented digital photography technology way back in the 1970s.
Wait, really? The 70s?
Yes. Their own engineer, Steve Sasson, built the very first digital camera. They literally held the keys to the next century of photography right in their hands.
Wait, if they had the patent in the 70s, why didn't they launch it? Because that sounds less like a caveman survival instinct and more like just sheer corporate arrogance.
It totally does from the outside.
Right. So how do we separate bad business strategy from biology here?
Well, it looks like arrogance in hindsight, right? But in the moment, it was textbook loss aversion driven by negativity bias.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The executives looked at digital photography and rather than seeing the massive positive gain of creating an entirely new global market,
Their brains hyper-focused on the threat.
exactly. They were paralyzed by the fear of the negative outcome. They were terrified that digital cameras would cannibalize their core strength, which was selling physical film and chemicals.
So the psychological pain of losing their existing profitable film business was vastly stronger than the potential joy of dominating a new digital frontier.
That's exactly it. Driven by that deep-seated biological aversion to loss, they just buried the technology.
Wow.
They let the fear of the unknown blind them, and
Yeah.
because they refused to adapt, the market eventually just moved on without them.
Which lead to their complete bankruptcy in early 2012.
Yeah.
That is just staggering to think about. An empire toppled not because they lacked the technology, but because the actual brains running it were stuck in survival mode.
They were staring at the one broken bulb of potential risk instead of the 99 glowing bulbs of future opportunity.
Man. So if our biology is that powerful, if it can literally bankrupt a billion-dollar monopoly, Are we just passengers in our own brains?
It feels like it sometimes.
Right. Like, is our software permanently corrupted by this negativity bias?
Well, that is the exact fatalism that the Columbia University study, the one published in Nature Communications, completely dismantles.
Okay, thank God.
Right. This research provides an actual roadmap for overriding that ancient programming. The research team, Megan Spear, Sandra Ibrahim, Daniela Schiller, and Mauricio R. Delgado, they wanted to find out if we could deliberately update our emotional memories.
And crucially, if those changes would actually last neurologically, right?
Exactly.
And their methodology here is so much more robust than older studies. I mean, a lot of past research on memory only looked at super short timescales.
Yeah, like checking in on a participant an hour later.
Right. Or they would show participants random negative images or scary movie clips in a lab, which has absolutely nothing to do with the person's actual lived experience.
It's just not realistic. But the Columbia team designed something far more demanding. They brought in 297 participants across 4 distinct studies.
That's a solid sample size.
It is. And instead of random images, they used the participants' own real-life autobiographical memories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The core instruction was to take a deeply negative personal memory and deliberately attempt to recall positive aspects or hidden silver linings of that specific event.
So they did this either by writing it down or speaking about it verbally, right?
Yep.
And they tracked these participants over serious delays. We're talking 24 hours, then 1 week, and then 2 entire months later.
Which is huge for memory research. They tracked the emotional self-reporting, the actual linguistic content of what was recalled, and the neural activity.
And the data proved that through these specific tasks, participants were actually able to shift the focal point of their negative experiences.
They were. And more importantly, this led to beneficial physiological changes in how those events were remembered even 2 months down the line.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I am struggling with this part just a bit.
I mean,
Well, if I am going through something truly painful, like a devastating heartbreak, I can't just forcefully think, well, at least I learned what I don't want and magically feel better.
no, of course not.
Right. So how is this not just forced toxic positivity? Like, how does a simple thought exercise actually stick neurologically?
Okay, that is the crucial distinction to make here. Toxic positivity is a form of denial.
Yeah.
Right? It's pretending the pain just doesn't exist.
Which never works.
Never. But the researchers are talking about something entirely different called cognitive regulation.
Cognitive regulation.
Yes, this is about engaging your prefrontal cortex. That's
Yeah.
the logical, analytical, forward-thinking part of your brain. You engage it to actively change how you process a situation. When you do this while recalling a memory, you trigger a biological process called memory reconsolidation.
Okay, let me see if I can visualize this. It's less like opening a computer file and typing over it, and maybe more like walking through a dense forest.
I like that.
So every single time I recall a traumatic or negative memory, I'm walking the exact same neural path. Over the years, that path gets wider, the brush gets cleared, and it becomes the absolute path of least resistance for my brain to travel.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize neuroplasticity, actually.
Thanks. So memory reconsolidation isn't trying to burn down the forest or pretend the path isn't there at all.
No, it's not.
It is actively bushwhacking a new trail that branches off that main path. By finding a positive reframe while the memory is active, I am clearing a new route so that the next time my brain walks down that memory, it has a clear path that leads to a clearing instead of, a dark cave.
That perfectly captures the mechanism. Every time you pull a memory out of long-term storage, it becomes slightly malleable for a brief window.
Oh, interesting. Just for a brief window.
Right. And by engaging your prefrontal cortex to find a genuine positive meaning in that exact moment, you are allowing new neural connections to be physically incorporated into the old memory trace before it gets filed away again.
You are bushwhacking that new trail.
Exactly. Let's apply this to the breakup example from the study.
The classic negative autobiographical memory.
Usually, reflecting on a bitter breakup primarily evokes rumination, right? You travel down that well-worn path of rejection, arguments, and pain.
Yeah, the dark cave.
But using cognitive regulation, you actively engage your logic. You look for a genuine new insight. You might focus on the realization that the relationship's failure forced you to build stronger boundaries,
Well, yeah.
or that it pushed you to develop a much closer relationship with your friends who supported you through it.
So you are actively introducing a new variable into the equation while the memory is open.
And through memory reconsolidation, those new variables wire together physically. So the next time the breakup memory triggers, it pulls that new positive insight along with it automatically.
Wow.
It fundamentally changes the emotional weight of the memory, making the original trigger far less distressing.
And the stakes of this research go so much deeper than breakups because the core motivation behind this study for one of the authors, Megan Spear, was profoundly moving.
It really was.
During her time in graduate school, her father suffered a severe stroke. It left him paralyzed on one side and completely unable to speak. And tragically, he passed away a few weeks later.
Yeah, it is an incredibly heavy, traumatic experience to process. And Spear notes that, obviously, she wished it had never happened.
Of course.
But as time went on, she began to notice her own mind autonomously searching for that new trail in the forest. She started to focus on the fact that he didn't have to continue to suffer in a paralyzed state for an extended period,
Right.
and that he was ultimately at peace.
And because she is a cognitive researcher, she was able to step back and actually observe her own neuroplasticity in action.
Which is pretty amazing.
It is. She realized that over time, this positive reframing, this deep gratitude that his suffering was relatively brief, would automatically emerge whenever she revisited the traumatic memory of his passing.
The cognitive regulation had permanently reshaped the memory trace.
That's incredible.
And we also need to look at the massive physiological implications of this too. Because when the brain fixates on a negative memory, the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, it sounds the alarm.
Right, the predator in the bushes.
Exactly. This signals your adrenal glands to start pumping cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone, right into your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes, your digestion slows down.
You are literally in fight or flight mode over a memory.
You're physically reacting to a ghost. Exactly the issue. But Spear's research shows that reminiscing about positive memories or successfully bushwhacking these new positive reframes physically dampens the amygdala's alarm system.
It turns off the alarm.
It does. When the prefrontal cortex successfully regulates the emotion, it halts that neuroendocrine response. It literally reduces the levels of cortisol in your body.
That's huge.
It's massive. The ability to find positive meaning in past negative events is directly linked to fewer symptoms of depression, a much faster cardiovascular recovery from acute stress, and just a significantly higher baseline of resilience to future adversity.
Okay, so we understand the biology of the broken bulb. We see how the $20 bias creates these massive blind spots, and we know that memory reconsolidation can literally lower our cortisol.
Right.
But how do we actually apply this on, like, a random Tuesday afternoon? Let's take the daily tactics from both the Lucidity article and the Columbia study and figure out how to integrate them into our routines.
That's a great idea.
Let's start with feedback, because giving and receiving criticism is just a daily minefield.
Oh, absolutely. The Lucidity article points to the radical candor model as a solution here.
Radical candor.
Yeah. When you are giving feedback to a colleague or a partner, you have to operate with the understanding that their amygdala is primed to interpret your critique as a literal predator in the bushes.
Right, their threat response is going to fire way before logic kicks in.
Exactly. Therefore, you must establish safety first. You have to care personally while challenging directly.
So, by framing the critique within a context of genuine support and clear intention, you provide the listener's prefrontal cortex the context it needs to tell the amygdala to stand down.
Right, which allows the feedback to actually land constructively.
And if you are on the receiving end of that feedback, you have to recognize the physiological friction happening in your own body.
You have to feel it happening.
Right. When your heart rate spikes after a minor critique, acknowledge that it is your ancient biology overreacting. It's not a lethal threat.
Right.
That simple acknowledgement gives you the space to ask, what can I actually extract from this to improve?
It's about pausing.
Yeah. Now, another tactic that requires overcoming serious neurological friction is gratitude. We hear the word constantly, but there is actual hard science behind why we have to force it.
There really is. Because the brain categorizes positive moments so weakly and fleetingly compared to negative ones, passive appreciation just isn't enough.
It just washes away.
Exactly. You have to use deliberate, focused attention to shove those positive experiences into your long-term memory. It requires active daily reflection to counterbalance the disproportionate weight of the negative stimuli we encounter.
You are basically manually overriding the algorithm.
That's exactly what it is.
And when you inevitably find yourself caught in a rumination loop, like when you were staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., you have to short-circuit the system.
You have to break it.
Yeah. The article suggests using mindfulness, perhaps through a guided app, to center your awareness. But if sitting in silence just amplifies the noise in your head, you need to use physical action to break the loop.
Movement is key.
Go for a run, put on a playlist that dramatically shifts your mood, dive into a dense book, or honestly, just go talk to your dog. You have to force your cognitive attention away from the broken bulb long enough for the threat response to cool down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the broader implications of breaking these loops are incredibly encouraging, particularly regarding where the Columbia researchers are heading next.
Oh, where are they taking this?
They are now deeply investigating the role of social support in this entire process. They're examining how negative memories and emotional responses mutate through conversation with other people.
Oh, meaning we don't have to bushwhack these new neural trails completely alone. We aren't limited to just self-regulation.
Not at all. Social regulation is proving to be immensely powerful. Having a trusted person help you reframe an experience can actually accelerate memory reconsolidation.
Wow, so talking it out actually changes the neural pathway faster.
Yes. And this is vital because clinical depression is closely linked to a severe deficit in positive memory recollection.
That makes total sense.
Right, so a deeper understanding of how interpersonal conversations can fundamentally update memory architecture is going to be incredibly significant for informing future treatments for mood disorders like depression, generalized anxiety, and PTSD.
It just provides such a hopeful framework. So to bring our journey today full circle, we started by looking at our own biology, understanding that our brains are these ancient alarm systems dedicating massive processing power to the one broken bulb to keep us safe.
All right.
We explored how that same survival instinct creates a $20 bias, driving extreme loss aversion that can paralyze decision-making and literally destroy entire empires like Kodak.
Poor Kodak.
Seriously. But then we looked at the science of neuroplasticity. We are not prisoners to our biology. Through cognitive regulation, we can actively engage our prefrontal cortex, triggering memory reconsolidation to build new trails through our past.
We can literally alter our neuroendocrine response, lower our cortisol, and build lasting resilience.
We really can. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a fascinating societal question pulled directly from the comments section of the Lucidity article. It's a concept we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh, this is a really interesting one.
Yeah, it is the gender bias theory of negativity.
It is a profound variable to introduce, honestly. Because what if the biological negativity bias doesn't impact everyone equally across society?
That is exactly what reader Sally Brighton hypothesized. What if societal conditioning fundamentally alters how we process the broken bulb?
Right.
Her theory suggests that because boys are often culturally permitted to be messier and maybe feel less pressure to get things absolutely perfect in early education, they might become neurologically accustomed to minor failures.
They learn to brush off criticisms much faster.
Exactly. Meanwhile, girls are frequently conditioned from a very young age to strive for absolute perfection and compliance,
Which means they might internalize those negative comments far more deeply.
widening that negative neural pathway early on.
The downstream implications of that conditioning in adulthood are massive, too.
Sure.
It feeds directly into the systemic issue of female imposter syndrome. It creates this very real, well-documented scenario where a man might look at a job description, see he only meets 8 out of 10 criteria, and just confidently apply anyway.
And often secure the position.
Right. Whereas a woman might look at that exact same job description and completely refuse to apply unless she meets 10 out of 10 of the criteria.
The fear of the negative outcome, like the missing 2 criteria, looms exponentially larger for her.
It's a really powerful point.
It really makes you wonder how much of our daily negativity bias is purely biological and how much of it is being artificially amplified by the pressures and expectations society places on us.
Absolutely.
It is definitely something to reflect on as you take your new understanding of memory or consolidation out into the real world. So the next time someone tells you not to wear your sunglasses on your head,
Take a deep breath.
recognize the amygdala firing, look at the 99 glowing bulbs around you, and maybe go buy a pair of reading glasses to put up there too. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.